talk about different aspects of performance. In case you don't know me, I'm Nicodemus. Hello!
Hello.
I'm a rat. I've been in the fandom for, a lot of years. And so, co-panelists with me here.
Hey, I'm Aphinity. I've
Awesome.
been in fandom for a long time too.
I'm Kijani. I've been in since 2008 and I do a lot of public Fursuit performance and locally in this area. So.
Oh yeah, that too.
Yeah. So yeah, we have between us performance experience in lots of different venues, I think. At conventions, stage performance, public performance, public stage performance, I forget. Mostly charity,
Mostly,
crowd work.
Charity stuff. Professional aspect.
Yep. So we're going to talk about just a bunch of different topics. We have to focus so much on public interaction. I think there's a fursuiting and public panel, so we're going to focus more on performance technique and what you need to know that's different when you're performing in performance technique.
Okay, so basically, just for an intro, what is important about Fursuit performance? What's the difference between a guy in a fuzzy animal costume and someone that actually interacts with the crowd and is a believable character? Is there one right way to perform? I don't think so. Based on your character, there's a multitude of ways that you can express yourself and get yourself to what I call, and I think Yippee Coyote coined this term, it's called the power of pretend. It's getting the audience to believe in your character, and that is so important. And in order to do that, the best way to do it is to really get to know your character really well. Like imagine kind of like an archetype of what their personality skills, personality traits are, how you want your character to act when you're out there on stage, your quirks, everything about your character. So when you put that costume on, you are actually becoming that character and really have the mind. Yes?
I think your character, like you've designed him to be serious, but I don't think that really would transfer well over to Fursuiting.
No, I think you can do serious characters. I mean, serious, menacing.
Yeah, I've definitely seen menacing.
You can do that.
You can even do grumpy. You can do grumpy too.
Yeah.
Uni Otter does that well.
It's trickier to do low energy emotions. Serious is a very low energy emotion, but I think you can absolutely pull it off. We'll talk a little bit later, I think, about attitude and poise, which is where that will come in. Now, you used a term on stage, which I think is very important. And that's something that if you've got just convention fursuiting experience, we're very casual in the fandom about performing characters. Walking around with our heads like this. And, if you're doing public performance, you want to be much more mindful about the fact that as soon as you leave whatever changing area you have, at that point you're on stage. You must assume people are watching you all the time. And you continue to be on stage until you get back to your changing area. And that means even when you're tired and you've got like sweat running down you because you've been out there for an hour and kids have been punching you and kicking you, you still have to walk along like this while you're going, oh, God dang, my knees hurt. You do that silently, of course. That would just
Totally. I think the biggest thing with that is, and we were going to touch on this, was not only knowing the type of character you're in, but also what specific things you can kind of fall back on if you ever fall into a kind of a rut. Like if you get into a performance issue where maybe you're a little unsure what's going to happen in the situation, your mind draws a blank, you immediately have something that character, specifically that character, or maybe even generically, can just sort of call upon to kind of do. That's maybe a little more specific to get right now.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, for public performance, at-con performance, give your character sort of actions all the time. When I'm out as my rat, I like to fiddle with my shirt. That's just, if I'm just standing around.
Yeah, if I'm my own,
keep movement going.
you'll see me always wagging my tail if I'm sitting still. I'll just sit there like this, just wag my hips around. It's, something like that, something a dog would do. So little things like that.
As soon as you stop in a fursuit, you become a stuffed animal, which is also cool, but not what you're trying to do at the moment. So you want to be sure that you keep movement going, even if you're not interacting with people, even if you're waiting for someone to come up the elevator. You got to have something you're doing, just movement to your body, so you don't become static, you don't become dead. And that's an important thing to get used to, and it's just a habit you develop through performance, through practice, and being aware of it. We totally need like some way to cue each other if we see people playing dead. We need some symbol out there.
Yeah, we totally do.
And also something important when you're fursuiting in public is to know your audience. So basically, you could be performing for a large crowd. Say you're a sports mascot and you're trying to pump up a whole stadium full. You have to make everything as big as you can. Big gestures. Go all out. But if you're performing in tight quarters, like say you're in a street festival and there's people all around, if you go go crazy like that, it's not going to go too well. So there are ways to be expressive, but within limitations.
Yeah, and one of the big differences in expression as a character is to remember that your face is static. I got started in performance doing improv, so very verbal, very visual, and so a lot of the reaction skills I developed were sort of like, and if you do that in character, it looks like this.
I have seen some that are really complicated and have moving eyes and all that stuff.
You can build the costume with technology to try to overcome that. I prefer a simple costume. I mean, no moving parts. It's just straightforward. But
Except maybe the shot.
you overemphasize head movements to try to convey the emotion in the character. And I know it looks really silly when I do that as a human, but in character, that's what you need to get that across.
And the thing is, when you're moving as a cartoon character, you have to remember how cartoon characters move. Okay, we're not just a standard. We're not a human wearing a fuzzy foam and fursuit. We're now a cartoon character. So Nicodemus just put on his head. He's now Nicodemus, right? He's Nicodemus the rat. So everything he does is going to be exaggerated. It's going to be over the top. Remember, the biggest thing that people notice about a cartoon is how it is over the top. So every movement that you think, if you're going to wave like this as a person, you wave like this as a cartoon character. And your audience will expect that. And if you don't do it, that's when you get pointed out. It's like, he's not performing very well. Like someone who performed our mascot at the opening ceremonies. Anyways, I'm not, you know what? Hey, he was a beginner. Fair enough. He's got to learn that. But that was obviously someone who had not learned that lesson yet. Hi, I'm waving my hand because I'm in fursuit, and you might be right here. Hi. So it's just the way it works. So big movements, big everything. That's what people are expecting.
Yeah, and practice with a video camera, ideally, in front of a mirror if you don't have a video camera, before you go out and do your first performance run, so you can see what you look like, because it isn't intuitive what your costume looks like as you're performing it. So it's very good to get that visual feedback, to try different things and see what works. And it's like, okay, if I wave like this, it doesn't work because it looks like I'm bonking myself on my head. I need to remember to wave out like this, because that's going to look better.
Or maybe like this, or this, or
Yeah.
whatever. Practice. Yeah. Maybe
Another good tip before you go out is to, even really experienced fursuiters do this too. Before you go out, do kind of like a head, shoulders, knees, and toes thing, and also your eyes, your ears, your mouth, and nose, because your muzzle obviously is not where your human muzzle is. So it's really good to know exactly where your different parts are on you before you go out.
anyone want to come up and demonstrate that? Any of the fursuiters, ideally? Sure. Come on up. So the reason we suggest this, and you'll see, as you said, Kijani, I mean, lots of people will do this. If you ever see Thumper when he's getting ready, and I happen to work with him in helping cause costuming group, every time before he goes out, and I mean every time, he does the standard fare. Do you ever do that yourself? How do you say your name? Yeat? Yeat. Okay, sorry. So Yeat.
He was here last year, was it? And I helped corrupt him, and now he's got a suit. In case you're wondering whether this panel's effective.
Looks like Cody made your suit too, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cody's a really great
So,
performer.
nice movement. He's not going static here.
Yeah.
Excellent. So what do you do before you head out? Check
Get
your tucked
changed.
in. Yeah. Nose, ears, get your head there. Check your tail.
Know where your tail is. Yeah,
Check your feet.
Good to go.
Excellent.
No, that's particularly important if I could mention this, because a lot of us will have more than one costume. Like for example, I have Ioko the Husky, which I love to wear at cons like this, some charity events. But I also do mascotting for the aquarium in Vancouver. And their mascot is a big giant beluga thing. Style kind of goes out the window when you're talking professional mascots. It's more about durability and function. So as a result, it's a shoulder-mounted head, which means that I can move my head inside of it. It's really creepy because I can be doing this, looking over here, and looking at the kid over here that's about to hit me. But one of the disadvantages of that is the eyes are not where they should be. The eyes are up here. So if I want to pretend, and to make things even worse, because it's a shoulder mount head, I can't move my arms more than this without the head going up, because it lifts the head. So if I want to actually reach my eyes, I literally have to go like this as much as I possibly can, and I only cover half of them. And this is I only knew this after I looked in a mirror and said, oh wow, I can't even reach those things. So I can't even look scared very easily without actually, so very important to know that, because obviously eyes on Ioko here, or actually more like here, eyes on Bebop up here. Very different.
Yeah, the costume can limit what you can do in performance. Most of us, I'm assuming, you're going to get more like fandom-style fursuits, which are very easy to perform compared to large fiberglass heads you'll get with commercial and sports mascots. If you do end up performing one of those, just remember to take some practice time and figure out what you can do with it.
Like this is no. Not even kidding.
Yeah.
The first couple times I was sitting there going like this, well, oh, right.
The other good thing to figure out, tying into the last panel, is where your eye line is. Now, with some costumes, you've got follow me eyes where the head angle isn't very important. If you've got cartoony eyes, convex eyes, you need to understand where the character's focus is and learn, okay, when I'm posing for photos, my head needs to be at this angle if I want to look at them, or I need to be like this in order to get the eyes into the camera.
Let's get another demonstration for that. Anyone in the back, maybe one of you guys, you willing to come forward? Whoever wants to do it. One of you.
Tiger, I think.
Okay. Yeah, come on up. Not memorize your street name yet. I'm sorry. I don't want to call your wrong name. Yes.
Oh, yeah,
It is Tiger.
No, Singa.
Tiger to win, but yeah, you call yourself
Singa.
Singa. That's what. All right. So Singa, sorry, you want to take
Go ahead.
Okay, so Singa obviously has a very specific look to him. His eyes are actually a little bit unique because they're glass eyes. So when he's looking at me, Singa, can you look at me? Okay, so he actually has practiced this because you notice his head is a little bit down and he's looking straight at me, and sure enough his eyes are in fact looking right at me. But more than once I was actually hoping you wouldn't know how to do that.
Just for comparison, hold your head level.
Hold your head level. Is that level? Okay, well then
It's a well bit.
Say his head was up here, maybe he thought that this was up here. Now he's looking over here, right? Or maybe he's looking at me through his tear duct, so maybe he has disproportionately started looking through his left eye more than his right. So maybe he kind of looks like this and his muzzle's maybe over here, right?
Great if you have a bird costume.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you have to remember where your particular costume is looking, because that actually makes a huge difference.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Singh. I appreciate it.
So other than head posture, body poise is also very important. The body is where you get a lot of the energy and a lot of the attitude. Because, like I said, the faces are static. You can do a lot with the position of the head, but the way you stand is also going to influence how your character is. So, your character, very serious, maybe your character is moving like this. It has very practiced movements, very high hold on the shoulders. When I'm doing my character, I tend to be very loose. My rat is kind of small, little guy, so he's just walking around like this. I tend to do, joints kind of wobbly. I don't know if you guys have particular movements that you associate with your character.
Well, kind of like you, more. I think for a serious character, the key is you have to move, slowly, like regal is the word, more with a purpose, I guess. Not so fun.
Intended.
Intended.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's all about whether it's all about how your character, how you want your character to be seen. Because I mean, again, if you think about cartoons, okay, that's how I do it. Every time I get in a costume, I immediately start thinking about all the Looney Tunes and Warner Brothers and whatever else I watched as a kid, Disney, all the things that I see characters do in those shows. And I actually visualize which character I'm actually trying to reproduce that particular moment. So if I think of, like, walking down the street, I might think of maybe the way Daffy Duck walks down the street. He's kind of, waddling a little bit, and he's got his arms swaying, and that type of thing. And you can actually watch video of that and see how he looks. But, regal character like that, think whatever, like, well, bad example, but, maybe Cruella de Vil or something. Someone kind of, I don't know, I can't do that.
Slinky evil.
Yeah, slinky, exactly, yeah.
The speed at which you move can inform a lot about your character. So if I just, I'm moving from place to place and I plant myself in, I can set up a very particular type of movement versus a more fluid, hey, I'm walking. I'm just, always be moving place to place. And you can get attitude that way. And again, how you carry yourself.
Let's talk about walking. Let's actually do that. Hey you. It is hey you, right? Yes. I think it is, right? Yes, okay. So hey you is going to help us demonstrate walking because he just so kindly volunteered. So hey you, I always like starting with this one. Can you walk like you would if you're out of suit? Just walk between from there to there. Okay, so yeah. So he's just walking, head sitting normal. How many people have seen suitors do that? How many people like that? So, hey, can you walk like you would normally?
Yes, it looks very tired, but
Yeah. So how about you try walking the way you would like to see people walk? See you walk. So there you go. Obvious differences there. I think everybody here can see that there were some differences there.
and that's something you have to practice. You have to figure out what works for your character. Try different movements. Elbows up and out is a great way to convey energy and get motion in there.
I know the hips. I like that one.
Planting chest forward is good. You can also have characters that are more reserved. Cross the arms, close the body, open the body when you're greeting someone. These different things convey different sorts of energy.
Well, I got one for also, like, depending on what type of character you are, you can, like, evolve, like, a specialist type of stance and walk. Like, if you guys saw me in the Fursuit parade yesterday, I was in a crux suit, and I had that really long,
Yeah.
Yeah, you do that really well.
and I'll, like, twitch my head, like, sideways, like, looking at cameras, eating one, tasted delicious. It charged my batteries.
I think I might have my camera.
That's a great example. And seeing you walk there out of suit, you can see how exaggerated you have to do those steps, how much you have to worry about moving the legs, lifting the knees, and carrying through, because the fur is going to try to hide a lot of that movement. If you've got a padded suit, it's going to try to hide a lot of that movement. You have to act through the costume.
Which can be actually an advantage. If you have a really, really thick padded suit, you can actually make movements look like you're not even doing them. Some of the dance performers I know, like for example, will actually do that, where he'll kind of manipulate his legs in such a way that it looks like he's floating across the dance floor, because his leg doesn't actually move. Right?
Cyber hamster.
Cyber as well, it's a great one. Although he's told me specifically his costume more limits his movement, but that's because he has so much shoving. Yeah. So, but yeah, stuff like that can actually be an advantage. And think about that in terms of it too. Like you think, I want to do this. How am I going to be able to do that? Okay. And you just practice. Just don't think it's weird to look in a mirror for hours. Because truthfully, I think we've all done it. Well, maybe not at a time, but certainly. So it actually really makes a big difference. You talk to any actor, they will sit in front of a mirror. Like Jim Carrey learned all of his acting.
That's my dad.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Jim Carrey learned all of his acting by looking in a mirror. You can do the exact same thing in a costume. So, I mean, he sat there for his first role. He would sit there and practice his facial expressions he was going to do on camera. And then actually had someone tell him whether he managed to pull it off on camera or whether he needed to do another take. And so, that kind of thing, I mean, even the professionals do it. So don't think it's weird to sit there and practice. So anyway.
Another thing you can do is to perform, to match your character's species. Now, I've performed with Hayu before in public, and sometimes he's a bunny, obviously, so he'll kind of do a bunny hop, when he's interacting with people. He's pretty good with that. Say if you're a bear character, you can move with big, slow, lumbering movements like a bear. Or if you're a fox, you can sneak around and be cunning and take people's hats and stuff like that. Be mischievous. Yeah, it really helps because people.
And that depends on the venue, what the audience expectations are. Public performance, particularly, there are very specific expectations for different character archetypes. So playing with that is a great way of sort of affirming the audience's expectations. They know who you are. They know what sorts of things you're going to do.
I have a little trick that I'm going to share with everybody. Has everyone sort of paid attention? Obviously, everyone here pays attention to the way people are acting, or has in the past noticed characters that are more sort of communicative and more emotive and more expressive than some others. Everyone's seen characters that are more so that way? Okay. You know what the trick is? You know what the difference is between all of them? All the things we just mentioned. Posture, poise, and little movements. Because looking like this at somebody is completely different than looking at someone like this, or like this, or like this. Those, I just said 4 different things without saying a word. And remember that when you're looking at a character and you see, holy crap, I really like how he's performing or she's performing. Pay attention to that, because chances are that's what you're seeing. You just don't even know it because it's subconscious, okay? And you have to push that subconscious thought into your conscious mind so that you know how to communicate those things. And it comes very naturally. I mean, I do it completely without even thinking now.
But it's a great observational test as you go around cons to look at it. Oh yeah, I like how that character is doing. And then try to think, okay, inside the costume, oh my god, their arm's like way out there to get that pose for the camera. Okay, well, I'll have to try that one.
I've lost balance a couple times posing for people.
Yeah. Done that too.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
You get the photographers that are a little bit masochistic. I'm like, no, a little further over. Oh, that's okay, fine.
Can I touch on the eye style?
Absolutely.
Briefly? Okay, this is something that I take quite to heart, because who knows Ayoko in here? Have you seen me around? A couple of people, okay. I'm a black and white and gray husky, and oh, there you go. Yeah, actually, perfect example. So Nicodemus here has
different styles. Right?
Yeah, different styles of eyes. Now, I'm sure most of you have seen these different styles. Maybe you're not aware of the differences, but obviously 3D eyes, as we call them, follow me eyes sometimes, are designed as an optical illusion to always be looking at the person, or always looking at you, just because of perspective difference. So right now, theoretically anyway, Nicodemus is looking at every single one of you out there. Now, Hayu, the opposite here, he has fixed eyes. His eyes are directional, and they will only be looking at and sometimes the wall inside. Such a simple movement, and yet look at the reaction it got. It's a perfect example. Great job, by the way. So, what I'm trying to say out of this is that your performance can completely change based on this factor right here. When I got Ayoko, I actually went to Scribble Fox and made my suit, and he said, what kind of eyes do you want? Because you're going to be, I told him I want a charity character. I want a charity character, something I can do public performance with, go to cons as well, but mostly focus on public perception and stuff like that. So you'll notice I was very happy, he's very, regal, kind of, very husky looking, but yet very playful at the same time. And the eyes were the one sore point that everybody around me was trying to argue with me, saying, you can't do 3D eyes in public performance, it doesn't work. You're going to creep people out, it doesn't work. Well, you may notice that Nicodemus has not stopped moving his head this entire time he's been wearing this head. Right. There's a reason for that. Because and this is even more important when we're saying how you have to keep moving. Because he's looking at everybody, if he sits there and just stares like this, it's creepy. It's really creepy. We'll figure it out. So, if you have a character that has 3D eyes, number one, and I hate to say it this way, but I have to say it this way, a lot of makers don't know how to do them. Nicodemus does. There's some makers who make 3D eyes that unfortunately don't really follow you. Those ones are a little bit less important to do this with. But yeah, they kind of go everywhere. It's depending on the angle. Some work really well from the front, or maybe from here, but maybe not from over here, or so on. So with that said, yeah. Speaking of cartoon noises, anyways, if you have a suit that has these 3D eyes, be very aware of this factor. And again, even more important to practice in the mirror, because anyone who's seen me perform as Ayoko, I have about 3 or 4 different expressions that I can give people just by changing where my head is oriented towards them. So if I'm looking at you like this, I'm probably smiling at you. If I'm looking at you like this, I'm probably pissed off at you. If, I do something like this, I may be mischievous. And I've learned this by positioning the people in the eye inside the costume. Anyone know what I'm talking about when I say that? Okay, those of you who don't, what that means is your eye, when you're in your suit, you will be able to see a physical shadow around the eye. Okay? There's going to be a visible location that you can see, and then obviously areas where they can't. Yes?
Okay, interrupt. How many people here don't yet have a fursuit?
A lot.
Okay, cool. So
that's great. Okay.
I've tried on the head before though.
Okay.
It's a realistic one, and they're really hard to see on it.
Yeah, realistic.
Yes.
Realistic suits like Shinga there.
heads vary a lot in how much you can see out of them.
It will probably be easier to see out the more cartoony ones.
Actually, no.
It depends.
Yeah.
It's all in the construction and where the eyes end up on the head to make the character face look.
Yeah. A lot of the so-called popular bowl eyes you will see. I don't know the character in the back here, but if you notice, his eyes have that plastic, blue plastic around, and then the black buckram in the middle. The black buckram is what he's seeing out of, or she.
Yeah.
It's he, I assume. Yeah. So that area is what he's seeing out of. On my character, the entire eye is buckram. So I see out of the entire thing, including the white of it. So actually, I have better visibility than a lot of the bowl eyes, as we call them. Yeah, and your character too. Yeah.
Yeah. The white is completely opaque. I see through the red and the black.
Yeah. So actually, that suit in particular might have limited visibility
It
compared to
is
some
actually the
others.
size of your eyes.
So anyway, all I'm trying to say is,
You've got even less than the full black area.
Yeah, speaking of eyes, my glasses are fogging up, so.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
it's
That's all right. Go
This
ahead.
is not a trade of a professional game.
You're in camera, it's all right.
So one of those things we haven't touched on is whether to take your head off in public.
Also, try to avoid wearing glasses inside heads because then your glasses get all slippery and you're like, you're bending over to do a bow and all of a sudden, I don't put my glasses back in. You're like hitting your head trying to knock them back on.
Five actually your friends.
I've
Yeah.
tried different things with glasses and heads, never had it work.
Yeah, well, I perform with glasses in my head, and the thing I use is this anti-fog spray called Parker's Perfect. Well, for the most important thing is, yeah, just make sure the builder, if you're building it yourself, you have to build about an inch of extra space in front of the eyes, obviously, but I found that spray works the best. You just apply it before you go out, and then wipe clean, and you're good.
I want to tell you about these heads in particular. This costume is basically one that I found on eBay, but a lot of them are built with this bowl-shaped kind of head. So it's a bowl made out of foam. You often find your eyes are basically about 3 to 5 inches back from where the actual inside of the eye is. And the further back you are, that's the more narrower vision that you have. I'm not sure you can see it, but you can see 2 black patches where I have
Looking
the
at
eyes.
the size of the actual black patches in the center of the pupils, you lost the plastic.
That's my trick, yeah.
The vision suit you could simulate by getting 2 toilet paper roll tubes, holding them up like binoculars. That field of vision is probably what you
Make
have.
sure they're clean toilet paper rolls.
Yes,
I look through that
sure
but not.
but that's the fursuit vision simulator method. If you ever, for those of you that don't have suits yet,
We should program that, you know?
Yeah, we should almost like make a box.
Put
with
this
toilet
laptop in
paper
front of your
tubes.
face.
Like, here you go. Here's your fursuit.
yeah. Here's your vision. Still want one of these? Okay.
Just to touch on what I was saying though, the positioning. So you got these different eye styles and different visibility, but there is going to be a point in each of those characters and heads where, and it's funny to think of it this way because we're used to just having our vision be our vision and that's the way it is. But when you have an actual indicator on your vision, and you're saying, okay, this part of the eye, okay, I'm going to use bigger just to be the illustration. If I put the person here, my character looks completely different than if I put the person here in the eye, or maybe over here, right? On a 3D eye, that's very key, because your 3D eye will change expression, I've found anyway, by changing which orientation your head is. Because on my character anyway, I've got, my muzzle is kind of shaped like this. So the top of it is wider. So that means you don't see the smile when I'm looking straight at you. But if I turn like this, you do. So that means that I now have two expressions that I can give people, even though I might be giving different expressions for other people. As long as I'm moving my head, people don't really notice it. So if I want to give an expression to Nicodemus here, I might just kind of go and just kind of sit there for a minute. But otherwise, I'll be moving around and kind of looking at you and then looking over here. I'll just kind of just move around, and the expression changes, but that's just fluid, and people don't think of it that way.
Just make sure you have a costume on, otherwise it does look awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I feel really weird. Like, whenever I pose for a photo, I have to do this every time, because this is where I look the happiest in Iogo. So I just get used to it, and I know to put the person, oh, okay, gotta put them, oh, no, they're not quite enough. And you'll see me actually do that if someone goes to take a picture of me. I might have my head stick and I see them taking a picture, and I'm like, oh, whoa. Every time. So you just have to think about it. But that's the 3D I think.
Yeah, photo poses are sort of their own topic. Unless you're working with a photographer who is posing you, you may want to do some experimentation and figure out what poses work. Do you want something that's forward and dynamic? Do you want something that's flat but open? You know, depending on your character.
Gauge how tight the costume and head is to your person, because the looser it is, the more you will have to bend your actual neck to actually get that same pose. Where like you think you're trying to do this, but your head's still actually looking this way. So it depends on how loose you get. You know, if you have a fishbowl head, you're definitely going to have to go like break your own neck. And the photographer's like, more. It's like, you take the damn picture. But if it's like a made-for-you head, the ones that are more tight around your head, it's going to almost be like 1 for 1. You won't have such a problem. But always gauge what kind of costume you have.
I don't want to single out anybody, but Dragon Scales likes to do that.
Yes!
Dragon Scales at FC, amazing guy.
That's
awesome dude. But he thinks we're all mannequins. If you can do what he's telling you to do, it will look better.
You can get great photos from a lot of the furry photographers, but they also expect every fursuiter to be pliable. Right over there. Okay, sure. No more.
Aside from a mirror, someone's like, you want to practice in front of him, but yeah, it depends on the kind of costume you have. For Dragon Scales, it's not exactly like a photo shoot, it's more like a back adjustment.
The other problem I can think of is whether, sometimes it's with people's fursuits, sometimes it is if you go to, perform a character somewhere and they give you a costume. The fit may not be perfect, particularly ankles are problematic. If you do a pose like this, and your fursuit leg comes right out, kind of spoils the illusion. So figure out, how your suit moves when you're doing those full extensions.
Or really let your pants sag.
Pull out the fabric. Yeah.
Coming out of the arms. If you ever do this, be aware that most suit makers don't think to allocate enough material here, so your paws will always pop out pretty common. So not always. It depends on how bad your suit is.
Get somebody to pop it back in.
Yeah, that's something that Scribble is really key with me. He's like, okay, move your arms up. Oh, not enough. Okay, good. I'll put more there. It's like,
oh yeah, the tailoring process, that's a big key, because a lot of costumes, they're tight. You brace your arms. You should have wore deodorant.
See, what else? What have we talked about? Talking in suit. Well, this is always a hot topic.
I think I just broke that rule.
Yeah. Well, I would say it depends entirely on venue. If you're out doing public performance, the public does not expect characters to talk.
Except kids.
And if you start talking, you will have to keep talking forever. And also, the kids will keep pestering you.
Yeah, and also if you're in a group of fursuiters and you have one talking character, all the people around you will expect all the other characters to talk as well, and that's, can be very
Because
popular.
at that point, you brought it into character. Now, there's some situations in venues, you may be in a venue where it's professional and it has a moving jaw and whatnot, and you can talk about character, but once you set that expectation, they basically stick a bit from front to end.
and the
Needless
kids.
to say, a majority of gigs are completely silent.
The worst thing is that the kids will focus on that more than they will on anything else you're doing.
They just want you to say something.
They're just like,
Oh, can you say anything? Talk again. Say my name.
Yes.
What's your name? How old are you? Talk to me, blah, blah, blah. And they just, no.
As soon as you talk, that's the focus.
Yeah.
So if you're doing public performance, go silent. Practice your pantomime.
Oh yes, little boy, I could say something. Security!
I got this thing that I like to do in my suit because, crutches are just crazy insane. I don't really actually like talk in my suit, but if somebody asks me to talk, I'll act like I'll steal their voice box because I'm really good with voice acting. And I'll look like I'll swallow it and then I'll eat something and I'll start talking like this rasping voice.
Oh, that's where my
trying to get their voice box. And then I'll like cough it up and then it's like, okay, and then I'll give it back to them.
And if not, there's always a squeaker.
Yeah, I think there are exceptions for talking in suit, and the key is like he did. Can you sell? Does it sell the character? I mean, if you can do that, obviously no human voices, because you don't want to be standing around saying,
$5.99.
My name is Joe, and I am a dog. You know, that's not right. Bark. Yeah, definitely. If you're into voice acting or
your character. One of the exceptions in our charity groups that we do sort of allow, because we actually expressly say, hey, Ego, how you doing? We expressly tell our characters, okay, we'd rather you didn't speak, but we kind of allow, we do allow like maybe yips or barks or very, very subtle things that kind of bring into the character. Like if a kid comes up to you, I want to hear you talk or something, and they keep insisting, you're like, bark. But you can smack them too. That doesn't get lawsuits.
But if you get to a fox, you're like, ding, 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 ding.
Stop! I lost my contact.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I got glasses on. Never mind.
Johnny, I'll borrow you because you're a little bit smaller, but one of the best uses of sound effects I ever saw was one of the adults was standing with kids, and it was a public performance, and just and the character just started
Grab somebody's hat.
and the kids were just like rolling on the floor.
You should give like a little Nickelodeon gag and like put it in his hat after he's using it.
Yeah.
No, okay, that's going to
So yeah, judge the audience. Judge the audience. Sound effects are a lot easier to pull off than voices.
Yeah.
Don't judge me, just judge the audience. I stand in judgment of you. No, you. No, you.
Props. Excellent.
props are absolutely key to interacting with the public. Yeah, your head is not a problem.
That can be actually, though. A very headless horseman.
I have a couple. I have a lion character, so I have this plush zebra leg. It's really a lot of fun. It's too. But yeah, anything to encourage interaction with the people you are performing for or with.
You're a bait to plush zebras everywhere.
Make sure your props are as light as possible.
Yeah.
Because
smaller size too.
Remember, when you're going out to do a performance run, you'll have nowhere to put it down. So whatever it is, if you're going to be out for an hour, you're carrying that thing for an hour. You can't put it down on the ground. You know, you can't leave it somewhere. If you're doing a public performance, you don't want to let it out of your hand. Around furry cons, you can probably like play catch with people at this one.
Catching it.
Sorry, I had a character, I don't perform him anymore, but if some of you have been around the fandom long enough, you would maybe remember my very ugly Dolphin character I used to run around in. I made it myself, you know, he was my best attempt I could do at the time. And, yeah. By the way, if you haven't made a suit yet,
do it?
Yeah, consider it. You will never be happy with it, I'll tell you that now. You never will. But once you actually do it, you'll learn so much about how these costumes work. Anyway, that's another subject.
Yeah.
What I was going to say out of this is that the one thing I did manage to do very well with him was he has a moving jaw, and he's a dolphin. So people don't really get a walking dolphin. They just don't understand. They don't know how to interact with a dog. You've got, you know, built-in things. Oh, here, let me scratch behind your ears. Oh, here, chase this ball. Oh, hey, there's a cat over there, you know. People know how to interact with a dog, or a cat, you know, here's some yarn. Oh, hey, it's you know, a lion.
Meerkat.
Sorry.
You should have learned how to swim on the ground. That'd be nice.
I know. Anyway, so meerkat, you know, it's like, hey, where's Timon? Whatever, you know, something. I know, but
He is so upset.
T-bone and
no. Anyway, but so if you get something like a frog,
Everybody gets one of that.
and all I'm trying to say is that ultimately props can really enhance a character that may not have anything else going for it. Like, for example, this character was creepy. The one I had, truthfully, he was creepy. I got called Creepy Dolphin Man. I don't know. It got a little unnerving at times, but then, you know, I decided at one point, you know what? I want to try doing public performance with him. And a lot of the people in the group were like, I don't think that suit's suited for it properly, pardon the pun. You know, it doesn't really work. And I came up with this gimmick of, well, what if I have like a fish in my mouth? Dolphins like fish, whatever, right? So I used to carry a fish around in my mouth all the time.
Sharks.
Yeah, and this was a fish I was willing to lose. Another key point. If you're going to interact with people with a prop, expect to lose it at some point. Don't give your work of art that you spent $200 or $300 on, or 10 hours of work on, and expect to get that back every time. You'll probably lose it one of those times.
Well, the fish will probably die when it runs out of water to breathe.
Mine was a plush fish.
Oh,
but anyways.
okay.
So when it runs out of flush water.
Yeah, exactly. So the gimmick for that was, like, the kids loved it. They couldn't believe how much they loved it. I would go up with the fish, and I'd take it and I'd hand it to them, and then I'd open my mouth, and they'd feed me. And they loved it, honestly. And, like, even all the people in Helping Paws were looking at it like, wow, that really works. Like, even the parents were like, that thing's creepy. And the kids would and we'd just be like, look at the kids. They're all over it. So props can be huge. So yeah, that's my personal story about props.
That'd be cool if you learn to catch people toss from a few feet away in order to catch it in your mouth.
Yeah, I did actually.
You did that?
Actually, I can now catch a frisbee in my mouth as I go.
Yeah, but you're
That
awesome.
Gets a crowd going. I did it like 6 times in a row one day. I was so proud of myself.
I'm proud of
I was
myself.
all like, okay, if it's here on me and I open my jaw at the right time, it hits, and it's like, yeah, it was perfect.
Oh, you think that's good? I caught a frisbee with my eye. It wasn't pleasant, but Arr!
Cool. So I think that's like the different topics we want to cover. But are there questions?
You go first. How would you recommend going about designing the character's personality in the first place? Because I'm sort of stuck on that aspect.
That's a good question.
I have one
You want to
suggestion.
answer that?
I have one suggestion for that. If you know of a character already, not say just completely copy somebody, but like somebody from a cartoon that could be somewhat identical to the one you're thinking about, watch it. Go up on YouTube and look at some episodes.
The Meerkat also had great advice.
It's not a bad idea to get inspiration, not copying, but to get inspiration.
Start with yourself. Figure out how, what do you want to project? Because Fursuit characters are often just parts of ourselves that we're bringing up and exaggerating. So figure out what part of you want to put out there. What is fun? What do you want to put out in the public? Do you want to be amazing, big? Do you want to be small? Do you want to be sneaky? Do you want to be mischievous? Do you want to be mean?
Insane.
Do you want to be an egomaniac? Center of attention?
WrestleMania?
Narcissist.
Figure out kind of what part of you want to take and exaggerate and turn into a character.
I was going to say, with that in mind, once you have that idea in your head of what you want this character to be like, think of specific examples. That can really help. Like as I was saying before, I briefly outlined this, but have a repertoire of things that you can fall onto for specific situations. So you don't even have to think about it. It just sort of, oh, that's this, okay, and then you just do this movement, and it just becomes this thing. Some characters, you'll notice there's things that they do, and it's very identifiable. That's usually what that is. It's like their default. You know what I mean? So you just come up with these things based on what you think that character would be. Like maybe, I walk up to Nicodemus and he says, "Oh, hi, Aphinity, how are you?" And I'd be like, something like this, and that's my thing. I just do this every time. These 3 fingers, and only those 3 fingers.
Hey.
Yeah. Or high five, or high five. Number one thing. Everyone knows a high five. Everyone. You can be 1 year old and know what a high five is. So that can be your default. In fact, that is my default.
Yes.
So.
The other thing to think about.
He's shaking.
You're stuck. You're stuck.
Somebody take their phone.
The other thing to think about is if you're doing character design, when you design the head, you can build emotion into the head, but remember that you're stuck with that same emotion the entire time you're performing.
So try not to look cross-eyed all the time.
Yeah. So I generally like characters that have a kind of neutral, slightly happy expression, because you can play a lot with that. I have seen. I've seen characters that have, very mean, menacing expressions.
Like that otter,
And yeah, it's like they're fun, but remember, you've got to perform that emotion constantly.
Somebody stole it.
And if you're around kids, it means you're still going to be glaring at them the entire time.
Can I add to that for just a minute? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Speak.
if we, Hi, I'm a dog. So, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm happy. Okay, so if I'm happy, I don't necessarily have to be stuck with that. Like if you, okay, so suspension of disbelief, right? Everybody's familiar with the concept? Okay. People want to believe that you're actually doing the thing you're projecting. So if you're scared and you have happy eyes and you cover those, oh no, I'm closing my eyes. I'm not actually closing them. This is a simple head, but you know. If you cover parts of the costume or whatever, you get totally different expressions.
Yes.
And you're not necessarily just stuck with the default expression, but never forget that this is what's out there.
I'm so glad you did that because I wanted you to come up here so we could actually demonstrate on you because your character in particular is perfect for that. It's having the overt, no, you're great too, Ego. He just
He just likes dogs.
I like dogs.
I'm a cat.
I like dogs.
Bark.
I like turtles.
It's big.
But yeah,
And trains.
if you've got different expressions built into the head, you may be able to cover some of it or change the expression, or you may not be able to depending on the design. So it's something to think about.
Ego, why don't you give us an emotion demonstration? Can you do that for us?
Yeah.
So how about let's see happy. He's happy. So you see he's kind of jumping around, excitable, shaking his hands a bit. Okay, how about sad?
Notice the change in the shoulders immediately. The shoulders lost energy.
Yeah, kind of shaking a little bit. You can see his posture. He's bending his knees. He's getting down small because he's unsure. Okay, how about actually let's continue that. Nervous. And he's kind of acting. You notice how very similar they are actually. I was actually, and you can see, but yet still different. He's very fixated on being
knees
quivering, knee quivering, all that kind of thing.
Twitching.
How about surprised? That might be the best surprise I've ever seen.
Just make sure your prop table actually does break.
Hey, here's a fun one. How about mischievous? Mischievous works really well with kids. Really well with kids. There you go. So, anyone have any other suggestions for like an expression?
Angry?
Angry? Okay, angry.
Step on the key.
Yeah, anger is a really tough one to do with a friendly, happy-looking fursuit because it has to be with his lower body. He's stomping around because really, that face, how can that possibly be angry to anybody? So,
That's actually, I noticed you just grabbed your face. You're hiding your smile a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real trick actually, and that's actually why I was, I don't know, but the dog there.
That's Ozzy.
Yeah, because, Ozzy is it?
Brinkley.
Oh, Brickley, okay. So Brickley, he has that really happy expression, but the minute he puts his paws here, he doesn't have it, or at least a lot less of it, anyway. So for that reason, you can make it look...
He can't contain his happiness.
Yeah. So he has a lot, he might have actually more difficulty showing these different expressions because he's so happy. I had that same issue with Ayoko, but thankfully I have the angle thing, which I can play with, so that's nice. But again, knowing your suit is really key on that one. And you can tell, obviously, Ego knows his suit, and that's key.
I mean, if he had eyes that could be like animatronic, that's one thing. But your eyes are stuck like that.
Crazy Joe. Although Crazy Joe's less of a performer, but his suits are amazing. But he'll even tell you.
His teeth are titanium. You can crush hands with those.
He's actually done it, hasn't he?
Yeah, he'll tell you if you ask him about the story of the guy who tried to come after him in the park, and that didn't end so well for the guy in the park.
What about wanting something?
Wanting something?
Like Oliver Twist.
Oh, it's like banging.
It's all on the neck.
There you go.
That's empty. You can have it.
Pull out the tablecloth and not put anything on.
Any other general questions? Brooke?
Yes. Did you go over knowing what your suit's dimensions are? Because I've assassinated people with my ears before.
we mentioned a bit. You have to figure out kind of what your range of movement is and where parts of your body are, not
Do your ears
take
move?
out things with tails.
My ears do wobble and flip like they bounce.
Do they hang low?
I have to stand, I literally have to stand in the elevator in the corner with my head down, otherwise nobody else can fit in there.
You have to go in there and think
And
about
they
what
look
you've
like
done.
they asked me, did you eat the neighbor's cat again?
That's not so bad.
Also, here, I was like asking about this. Also with a face that has conjoined expressions, like one of my eyeballs, if you actually were to see my crux, has a regular happy eye like that, and then one of my other eyes is like really tiny, like no pupil whatsoever. It's like that insane crazy look. Like how would you actually go about with making an expression with like two different eyes on one suit?
Do both of your eyes look straight ahead, or is one looking one way and the other way? Yeah, so you're mostly straight ahead.
Like if I were like seriously acting crazy, like I would be twitching and shaking and just showing that one eye.
There you go. Yeah, but unfortunately with that character, I guess it'd be challenging because you have the one eye that's technically still looking the same direction as the other eye, so you can't. To me, anyway, I don't know.
It's great though because if anybody actually, when I'm in suit, like if you actually know the general rules of crux, I'll just go over a few of them. Number one, if I like it, it's mine. Number two, if it's shiny, it's mine. Number three, if you put it down, it automatically makes it mine. All the rules go to stuff like that, but number 10 is if it breaks, you can have it.
Actually, you just touched on something I'd love to cover, and that is getting away with stuff.
It's so fun. It's so fun.
In truth, holy crap, I'm not in Canada, buddy. Stop calling me. Okay, anyway. If you are in suit, you're in character, you're performing, you can get away with murder. I mean, like, almost. But you can get away with stuff, and I tell this story every year, but I love telling it. I was working at the aquarium at actually a movie theater. It was a movie premiere. And so they had a ticket booth, and they had this little kid, he's about 10 years old or something, comes up with his ticket, and I'd seen people coming in, so I kind of gave the guy a glance. I sort of pushed the guy out of the way that was taking the tickets, and he kind of smirked, so I knew he was into it. So I'm like, I come down, and the kid comes up, he gives me his ticket, and I look at it, and I go like this, and I'm like, and I just take him, and I turn him around, and I lead him out of the theater, and he's like, hey! and then I kick him, like, of course, out the door, and I go and run with his ticket up to the ticket guy, and he rips the ticket and lets me in, and then the kid comes in. He's running after me, hey! You know, he lets him in, and it then became like a full-on Looney Tunes chase around the actual movie theater with like everyone watching and me flailing my arms, looking behind me, oh God! And this kid running after me. It was honestly the most fun I've ever had. And it was all because I was willing to take that step and do silly stuff. I put magazine racks in elevators, for example.
Okay,
Just leave it in the elevator. People thought it was the funniest thing ever. It's like, I don't know, stuff like that.
Don't try. Remember, no permanent damage, no property damage. Everything else is.
In case you get any ideas, don't try what he did at an airport, though.
That was actually at an airport. Oh, you mean the ticket? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I put the magazine
Oh,
back
you'll
in
get
the
a
elevator
ticket.
at the airport.
I had something that happened like that for me yesterday.
Aquarium promo.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
So you know me, that really, really cute blue and white thing that squeaks when you poke her and everything? Me. She's about this tall, she's got the big ears, and she squeaks when you poke her. She's got that big long. Well, literally, I saw her, and I looked at her, and I was pushing my head at her because she just kept squeaking. So literally, I walked up to her, and I picked her up, and I walked right out the room.
She was like, Amran, if you guys know who Amran is.
And then on the way out the door, they were like, okay, if you're going to take her, make sure you feed her 3 times a day, bacon and syrup.
How far is too far? Like, what's a good like?
Read people's expressions. Keep an eye on your audience, particularly if you have a fursuit head, where you can, position the character, but still see the audience. Then you can judge, okay, are they into it? Oh, they're not really looking that into it. Okay, I'm just going to undo that one and make a big show of putting it back.
And see, Ego's testing his limits right now. Actually, all in reading people too, I'm going to say this as a performance thing, there are people who are terrified of mascots.
Yes.
Terrified of people with their face covered, actually, is usually what it is. Be ready to read that.
Yeah.
I can give my tips from the...
Yeah, don't force it
Never.
on people. Let the audience come to you.
It is not funny to chase someone around who's literally running away from you. Trust me. People will think it's a game. It's not a game. Most of the time they'll smirk and laugh and smile, and then you realize, no, that's not actually, that's awkward to smile. They're scared.
I think Brittany has.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of public work occasionally. There's the children's park down in the Bay Area, children's trailer, which is awesome. But yeah, if kids are terrified of you, the best response that I've ever seen is be terrified of the kid.
Be terrified of them.
Oh my gosh, they respond pretty well.
That's a public performance thing that we weren't covering, but the one thing I will say with a kid, because they might not get this in the panel, the kids who are really terrified of you are the ones that look at you like this. They're not smiling.
They're just completely unsure what the heck.
They're not sure what the heck's going on. And the difference between scaring them and not scaring them is this. The minute you reach out towards them, they'll and they freak out. But if you're just sitting there waving at them and kind of going like this or whatever, anyway, that's a public thing.
Yeah, it depends a lot on the age. You have to learn how to read the audience, and it's a practice thing.
Does the teenager run away from them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other, if you're performing around kids, one other tip is the parents are usually much more open to being messed with. If you mess with the kids, sometimes that goes completely wrong. But if the parent is there and you want to just do something,
The types.
When you do that, you become the kid's new best friend. You're like, okay, singing out with your parents.
If you do that, that's great. If you do that with the kids can be, kicked off more than anything.
My favorite thing with kids is grab their hat and go like this. Just keep doing this, and then they think it's hilarious. I don't know. It's so simple.
As long as you give it back.
Well, even just as a parent, I'm far more amenable to messing with me than with my child.
Yeah, don't ever touch kids. That's the other thing. But that's another. Let them touch you. Don't reach out. Reach out to them, but let them do the final movement. Don't. Don't.
You have to come.
Yours is
very quickly. Yeah. And that includes the cons because we don't want people. That's why I'm saying it. We don't want people doing that. Grabbing kids and we get that name for it. So anyway.
I had taken my niece to Disneyland when she was about 3 and a half, and she held on to one of the characters and would not leave him, was standing right in front of the character when he was trying to interact with other people. So he took her head and just started moving her head around. Everybody started laughing so hard, and he was just moving her head around and moving around with her a little bit, but everybody thought it was really, really funny.
All right. Well, we're at the end of our time, so we're going to have to wrap up. But thank you all for coming out.
Yeah.
Hope this was helpful.